Good morning, folks. Hope you're all doing well. And please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I'm just sitting up here and again, changed my camera angle. Speaking of, not pleased with that one. Let's try there. That's a bit better. Okay, so I guess we'll talk about the Dutch. And I guess at a larger reach, the whole farming thing. So, first piece of information you should have is that nitrogen is 78 or more % of the atmosphere. Okay, so knowing that, I have to alter my angle here just a little bit to be comfortable. So knowing that, it leaves me wondering why in the hell the Netherlands suddenly decides to start shuttering farms, of all fucking things, in the middle of a food crisis, with the intention of trying to lower nitrogen emissions. The idea being that this will somehow fight algae blooms. It's been known for a very long time that artificial fertilizer getting into the runoff water is one of the things that causes algae blooms. If you want to stop that, the easiest way is to prevent the water from running off your land by, say, I don't know, planting trees close to water. You know, if you have a stream or a brook or a river or what have you, the best thing to do is plant a tree, or actually a couple of rows of trees, along the edge of your land. Yes, it does make your land less usable. However, you end up with a couple of really important benefits. Soil runoff is generally, if not halted rather, controlled. The trees will absolutely suck up any nitrogen that gets close to them, and their roots will move out to reach the sources of it. And then you get bigger trees, which means we have more trees processing carbon dioxide out of the air. Yeah, it's almost like all those tree planting ideas years and years ago would have worked if they'd followed through on them, using, you know, sensible geography. How many times have we seen, oh, we're going to go to a park that's already full of trees and plant a tree in an empty space? There's a reason there's no tree there. I mean, I'm not a gardener, but I know how a tree works. Yes, I am a woodworker, but that piece of knowledge actually predates my woodworking days. Sort of. Looks like I'm starting to get a little blonde in the puff. Anyway, it is becoming more and more clear that, or at least more and more evident, that those who perceive a conspiracy against food production of a traditional nature, they may very well be right. It seems that a lot of governments are content to basically starve their people until they force them to begin eating bugs. And of course, the obvious conclusion to be drawn from that is these people who are in power expect that they will never be eating bugs. Yeah. Don't think that's going to go quite the way you think it will. Quite a lot of us are, and when I say us, I mean Westmen in general, people I've talked to, people I've seen comments from, things like that. A great number of us are opposed to that on a purely ideological level. We think it's wrong, and we think it's probably going to, at least for me anyway, I think that trying to re-engineer the human diet to eat insect protein, yeah, it's probably not going to work for the vast majority of Western kind. For some of the same anatomical, physiological reasons that we can process milk, our bodies aren't adapted to it. In the same way that Native Americans, for lack of a better term, have a difficulty processing alcohol the same way the rest of us do. Or the issue we have with soy. Soy does not belong in the Western diet. It's been introduced to the Western diet with fairly disastrous consequences. I think one could reasonably make connection between... Oh, there's a bee in here somewhere, by the way, so I'm just scanning for him. But I think it's fairly reasonable to infer that attempting to re-engineer a diet that a people have adapted to is going to lead to a lot of problems. I suspect there's probably a link to the cancer problem with the soy. I don't know for sure. Oh, you're just a fly. Come here. I got you. But a lot of the foods we consume in the West shouldn't really be called food. Some of the cheese products are essentially petroleum products or plastics, which our bodies really don't need to be absorbing. A lot of things that are being called superfoods that are not normally eaten by Western, or normally part of the composition of Western diets, may not be superfoods for us. Fish oil, I mean, I'm from Newfoundland. My people have basically been eating fish since we got here. And even before that, I'm fairly certain I come from a fishing heritage in the south of England. So fish is one of those foods that my people process very well. I would be somewhat curious as to how well the Berbers... I'll deal with that later. I would be curious as to how well the Berbers, desert people, process fish, for an example. And apparently nobody processes corn, so why the hell do we use it so much? Excuse me. In any case, it really is starting to look like, with all the mysterious destruction of processing plants in the States and Canada, with the new cricket farm building, processing facility, whatever it is, in Ontario. I mean, if, for example, I'll give you a very good anecdote from my past, personally. When I first got to Alberta, years and years ago, well, a couple of decades ago, many, many moons ago, I was expecting to see wheat fields. Instead, in the early 2000s, everything was soybeans. And it was all being shipped out, generally to China, to be processed into food for Western people. Shipped out, shipped back. I always wondered, even then, what was the point? It would have made far more sense to simply have the wheat, which apparently some people can't process very well. So there's another indication that maybe wheat is not necessarily something we're adapted to yet, fully anyway. But I don't understand why so many... well, I understand the reason why so many farms converted. The money was better, period. And farming is a expensive and not always high return field. Trust me, as a woodworker, I understand that pain. But if governments are so determined to centralize, businesses and corporations are so determined to centralize everything, especially food production, then it makes sense that the average community begin to take that power back and go, no, we don't want to eat chicken that was grown in Washington State here in Newfoundland. One of the things I've noticed a lot, and I tend to avoid it, no offense to you Americans, but American apples, I can taste the pesticides. Canadian apples don't use pesticides. They taste much better. To me. I have a very, very sensitive palate, I guess. What else? With, and I've talked before about my experiences with sugar. Having cut sugar out of my diet about a year and actually more than a year and a half ago now. Whenever I actually take in something with a lot of refined sugar in it, the chemical taste is overpowering. One of my nephews actually enjoys Kool-Aid Jammers very much, these little drink packet things. And the other day I hadn't had one in a very long time. It was a hot day. There was a cold one in the fridge. I thought, yeah, I'll try it. No, I mixed it half and half with water, and it was still too sweet for me. I had to force myself to finish the glass. So the chemical sugar that's in... Settle down, you. I always have a problem with that little piece of eyebrow there. But the chemicals that are added to our food, or that our food is made of, I question it quite a lot. I try to eat nothing but whole foods. Cheese is not, obviously, but whole or as low processed as possible. Sausage, yeah, sausage is pretty processed. Not as highly processed as, say, bologna, which I haven't touched in years anyway. But I mean, the most processed things I eat are cheese and cheese and sausages, bacon, things like that, which are fairly low processed products. I tend to eat a lot of whole meat, pork chops, steak. I tend to avoid steak because, unfortunately, the supermarket chains here in Canada seem to think that they need to dye the hell out of everything so that it looks more appetizing for longer. I'm fine with a piece of beef that was cut off a cow 3 days ago being a little brown. Even pork now, I've noticed that pork is getting dyed pretty heavily. One of the things I do usually is I freeze whatever meat product I pick up, and usually I portion it out. Like if I buy, say, a big warehouse pack or a big family pack, I will portion it out into meals and freeze it in freezer bags. A tip for that, make sure you squeeze as much of the air as possible out of the freezer bag. That vacuum-ish effect seems to make a big difference for freezer burn. But what I'll do then is, a day or 2 days before I intend to eat the pork or beef, I'll take it out of the fridge, or the freezer, and put it in the fridge to defrost. And I've found that there is a vivid red fluid that comes out of that, which I know damned well is not blood. I've eaten absolutely fresh steak, moose for the most part, and when that bleeds, you can taste blood. It's actually fairly appetizing. But this stuff, when it cooks, it's not appetizing at all. It smells very bad, tends to taste very funny. It's probably regulatorily safe for human consumption, but I still try to avoid it as much as possible. To the point that I'll even, once those products thaw fully and there's a little pool of that fluid, I'll even rinse the remains off just to make sure I'm getting as little as possible in my meal. Does it make a difference? I don't know. But I do know that the less artificial things I consume, the better I feel. So, not really dietary advice, right? I mean, don't do what I'm doing any more than I would recommend someone do Jordan Peterson's all salt and water diet, or all beef and water diet. It works for him and for his family. They have a genetic reason that it works, or a physiological reason that it works at the very least. But even Peterson himself says it's incredibly boring and it is costly to his social life. And I can completely understand that. It's much the same for me. I very rarely go out to eat, and when I do, I very rarely have anything other than a burger. Simply because I like burgers. And I know for a fact that a McDonald's hamburger is not healthy by any stretch of the imagination. It's even less healthy the way I have them because I have them with just cheese. I should say cheese product. When I cook burgers at home, I generally try to find the least dye-containing meat I can, and we'll do the same process, freeze it in portions, take it out as I need, try to get as much of the blood out of it as possible, and I'll consume it from there. Now, I know that I could buy organic product. The problem is the expense with that. And where I live is at the end of a very long distribution chain. But generally by the time bananas arrive here in our supermarket, they're already half rotting. They might still be green on the outside, but because of the way they're transported, they tend to be pretty bad on the inside. And they actually do rot rather quickly. But one tip with bananas is if you hang them, it actually keeps them fresher longer. With green bananas, put them somewhere where the sun will get at them. If you can do it without having them in a closed container or even a bowl that doesn't have holes in it, that's another good idea. Bananas, if you don't know, produce a gas that actually causes them to ripen. And that gas is pumped into the trucks that transport them, at least for the first part of their journey, to encourage the ripening process. The problem is that same gas is at least a little bit heavier than air and will linger at the bottom of a bowl. So if you have a fairly deep bowl with a bunch of bananas in it, the bananas at the bottom will rot faster. Anyway, a little bit of knowledge for you. But yeah, I think there's a very strong case to be made for the Great Reset involving trying to switch us from actual food to highly processed bug bars or whatever it was they eat in Snowpiercer. And for the life of me, I don't understand why. These people have lost track of the duties of the sovereign, the obligation of those in power to protect and nurture those beneath them. Now, while a hierarchy is generally necessary to maintain order, this sort of action is indicative of anti-human sentiment in a way. They don't want us to be people anymore. They probably already perceive us as some form of asset. And as unfortunate as it is to say, I really hope it doesn't require a complete overhaul of government systems, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does in order to correct this issue. We need to reinstill the ideas of honor and duty and obligation into our children, or else this problem will become worse. As much as I wish I could stay in Canada and make it a better place, I don't think that's an option for me. Very unfortunate. I am proud to be a Newfoundlander, and like every other person from this island, I absolutely love it. But staying here is not really an option. Anyway, folks, that's it for me. Hopefully you're all having a good day. I didn't actually intend to make this long a video, so I will be looking at a new streaming time slot for Sundays. If you have any input as to what time that would work for you, please hit me up in the comments. If you feel like helping me on my journey to the States, there is a donation link below. Other than that, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And I appear to have become something of a regular on the Sultans of Chatelet podcast on Saturdays, which is something I'm quite happy to do. I actually enjoy talking with those guys. I would venture that I would, at least from my end, call them friends, and look forward to building a deeper friendship with them. Disco, you're getting a hug when we meet. Be prepared. It's going to be a bear hug. I don't do things half-assed. That's not true. I do a lot of things half-assed, but not hugs. Anyway, I'll cut this off here because it's getting really long and I don't want to be forever uploading it. Other than that, yeah, have a good day. Take it easy. Love you all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Did I get the button? I did not get the button.